morning, good afternoon, and good evening to a few of you. And for those watching the replay, welcome to the community briefing. My name is Gregory Sneed, and today is February 3, 2022. And I was talking to somebody 2 days ago. I said something about 2012. I said, oh my God, that's 10 years ago. So time is marching on, but that's a good thing. But it means we're still here. So welcome. We've got a great show for you today. Our guest will be joining us from the California Department of Finance, and hopefully she'll be joining us momentarily. In the meantime, a little bit about my business. I am in financial services. The name of my company is Lifesaver Financial Services, and I help my clients keep more of the money that they make. And I do that through life insurance. I do that financial coaching and financial literacy, because I believe that when you feel better about your money, you feel better about your life. So if you'd like to live better, get on better terms with your money. And I'll put some information in the chat. It'll be my pleasure to chat with you. And now, the queen of our community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to have you. Happy Black History Month, although this is our dedicated month, but we do know that we celebrate Black history 365 days a year because we don't get to take our Black skin off and hang it up for any other month. So there you have it. It's my favorite month because I get to talk about my people and my culture and my history, and I enjoy all of that. So welcome to the community briefing. This is a platform that is sponsored by Recycling Black Dollars and the BBA, the Black Business Association. And we're here every Thursday at 11 a.m. and we're bringing you information from the stakeholders and the leaders in our community that are making things happen for us and making sure that we get firsthand information when it's hot off the press. We have a great team, Mr. Gregory Sneed, Ms. Robin Billups, and she's gonna introduce herself in a minute. Mr. Stephen Turner, who's producing and helping the producing of the show. He's not here as of yet. And we have a great guest. This is our platform. So we would like you to put your information in the chat room. Any questions and comments go into the chat room. And then when the speaker is speaking, the moderators will interject the questions. So direct your questions to the moderators. And that's some of our little etiquette. With that, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Robin Billups. I'm so happy to see her, and she'll tell you why.
Good day, everyone. Again, I wake up every morning praising God, because again, today isn't promised to us. Some of you guys are aware of the fact that I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had a crisis in October. I was in the hospital for 30 days. The Lord blessed me to come back to you. And I had a conversation with him that I don't think he was ready for me, and I wasn't ready to come in if it be his holy will. And so with that, my conversation with God was the fact that you've given me some things to do. And one of the things that you've given me to do is to work with our community and to share, my knowledge, my work skills, my connections. I created a consulting practice after spending over 30 some years in the banking industry, strictly to educate. And I think that that's so critically important in our community. And again, I want to, appreciate the fact that the prayers do work. Prayers change things, and I'm here because of prayers. And know that, my mantra is, if you're around me, you're not going to be able to say you didn't know. So whatever you need to know, ask. That's the reason for this platform, is for us to be able to provide insight information, current insight and information on what's happening that's affecting our community. And most recently, you guys have hearing us talking about a project that Michael Anderson is working on that's for sale housing for the Black and Brown community. And again, our focus is, we're not eliminating or excluding anyone, but we want to ensure that the Black and Brown community, especially the Black community, is aware of all of the assets and attributes and services that are available to help us move forward. So again, we thank you guys for dialing in every week. You know, if there are some folks that you think that we should bring on the briefing, or you think that you should be able to make a presentation, put that in the chat box and let us know. Because again, if we collectively can rise, then we collectively will grow. And it's all about economic empowerment and economic inclusion. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for your prayers. And know that prayers do change things. I'm a living witness. And when we get our e-pass and we can touch, you better touch me, because I am a walking miracle. I am. I believe that.
That
So
she
thank you.
is. Amen to that. Amen to that. And I am happy to have you on the other side of me up here, my lady, my
Yeah.
friend. Well, our guest is here, Greg. And if you want to kick it off, welcome to everyone. Ardina, Andre, Lamont, Michael. Good morning, Addison and Deborah and Veronica. Glad to have you, Bianca, our regulars. And Addison's here from Cameo. I heard that we had a conflict last week with Cameo, did we?
No, it was weird because I logged into the Zoom and nothing happened. I don't know if it was a glitch or something, but nothing happened when I logged in. It was just a blank screen. So I don't know.
Wow.
Okay. All right. I don't know what that was, but it was interesting. Some people were over in a Cameo meeting when they should have been over here. It was wild, but our guests all our audience got to introduce themselves. So it was good. We did a RBD special. All right, Greg, it's back to you.
That the R&B group Cameo? No. Ow. Okay. Well, today we have a guest, and she is from the California Department of Finance. Her name is Somjita Mitra. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Somjita?
Somjita.
Okay. So Somjita, and is Mitra or Mitra?
Mitra.
Mitra. Okay, good. She was recently appointed, I guess it was last year, Chief Economist of the California Department of Finance, where she is serving as the Chief of Economic Research. She was the director of the Institute for Applied Economics at the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation from 2017 to 2019. She was an economist there from 13 to 17. She's been a senior economist at the Recon Research Corporation, project director at Horizon Consumer Science, and she earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in economics and a Master of Arts degree in politics, economics, and business from Claremont Graduate University. She's a member of the Council of Community and Economic Research and National Association for Business Economics. She was appointed by Governor Newsom, was that last year or 2 years ago? Okay. And what else? I think I've covered most of everything. The only thing I don't know is that, and she'll share with us, where did you grow up? And she is an expert on economics. So please welcome Somjita Mitra.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you. I was having a little bit of technical issues, but I'm glad I was able to sign in. Like Greg said, my name is Somjita Mitra, and I actually grew up in Orange County. And I went to school. My undergraduate was at UCLA, go Bruins. And then I went to graduate school at Claremont Graduate University. So I've kind of been in Southern California my whole life, except a couple of years ago when I joined the Department of Finance, and kind of doing what I did at the LA level, on the state level. And so this has been a really interesting time, because obviously with COVID and its economic impacts, and what we really need to do to build a robust, inclusive, equitable economic recovery for all Californians is my focus.
Are you now in Sacramento?
I am actually in Southern California. Yeah, because during COVID, it's just hasn't really made a lot of sense to stay up there when I don't go into the office too much.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And
Thank you.
You are impressive. Your credentials are impressive.
Thank you. So,
well, welcome. So
it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be here. I think I can share my screen. Let me make
sure. Hold on 1 second. I'll make sure you have access. Okay, now you can.
Great. bear with me.
Mhm.
And- Okay, here we go.
There you go.
All right. So as the chief economist, what I do primarily is really studying the economy and projecting what we expect to happen in the future in the next couple of years. And that economic projection feeds into the revenue department. And the revenue department decides what revenue projections are going to be, which goes into the state's budget. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. We have a population of almost 40 million people. So these decisions that we make really are on a country level in terms of how important they are for the state and the nation. So before I started talking about the pandemic, I wanted to look at how things were just 2 years ago, which seems like a lifetime ago, but we were in the middle of the longest, or we were at the tail end of the longest economic expansion in history up until that point, over 10 years. Our unemployment rate had fallen from the height of the Great Recession, which before this pandemic was the worst recession most of us had seen in our lifetimes, from 12.7% to 4.2%. We had in California 118 months of consecutive job growth, month over month. And 1 out of every 7 new jobs that were created in the US were created in California. And we had 3.9% average GDP growth over a period of 5 years. But I also wanted to say a little bit about, there's been some issues, even though all of this looks really good. There were some pre-existing issues in California pre-pandemic that were exacerbated by the public health crisis. So pandemic hit in February and March of 2020, and our unemployment went up to 16% in May, just a few months later, from a really low 4.2 to 16%. That was our historic high in California that we've seen in our history. Our GDP contracted instead of growing from 3.9%, actually contracted by 31.5%, which was the largest contraction in our GDP since the Great Depression. And, I said that 1 out of every 7 new jobs that were created in the US were created in California. Well, 1 out of 6 of those jobs we ended up losing in just a 2-month period. And our state's budget went from a projected $5.6 billion surplus to a $54.3 billion projected deficit. So things were looking pretty bleak at the beginning of the pandemic, and we also were not sure what this public health crisis was going to do to the health of everybody, not just Californians. But there were some pre-existing issues in California that had existed, and I'm sure all of you are already aware of these. We have a declining population. California is primarily dependent a lot on international migration and births over time to kind of keep our population growing. A growing population is necessary to keep our economic growth continuing. But as you can see in this chart, over the last few decades, that bold red line is actually our net population change. And the blue line is our births, which have been steadily declining. And that's a lot to do with some demographic factors. Women tend to have children later in life and thus have fewer children. And just the family size is also declining. And our net migration, we depended a lot on international migration. And even prior to the pandemic, due to some decisions from the federal government, things like that, before, our international migration had kind of fallen. And that, of course, was worsened by the pandemic. And our debts have been, as our population obviously ages, unfortunately, we're going to see more debts. So as you can see, that red line is really tailing down towards just the 0. So our population isn't really changing, and we don't expect it to grow over the next few years either significantly. So it's pretty much staying at 0. So that's important for our economy to grow. We had pre-existing income inequality. California is a great state if you're one of the haves, not such a great state if you're one of the have-nots. And that green line on top is the top quintile of earners. And you can see from 2010, just in about 10 years, their income grew by 30.6%. So those who were already earning the most ended up making even more. That light blue line at the bottom are the lowest quintile. And their household income only grew by 12.3% in that same time period. So the haves were making even more and the have-nots were growing relatively slow. So these are some issues that have existed in our state pre-pandemic and were actually exacerbated by the impacts of the pandemic. So I like to show this chart because it's showing the February 2020 jobs, where we were right before the pandemic hit, relative to December 2007, which was right at the end of the Great Recession. So the size of the circles is how many jobs are in that industry, and where they are on the chart is relative to the average wage in US or in California as of 2019 US California dollars. So you can see that health and educational services, that really were the bulk of the jobs that were created in California. But most of those jobs you can see fall below our average wage. So how most of the jobs that were being created in California were actually making at or below the average wage in California. Very few jobs in comparison were making above the average wage. Information, very small sector. Yes, you make a lot of money in it, but there's very few people that are employed by it. And of course, there are some industries on the left of the vertical line, which means that they lost jobs relative to December 2007. So these were industries that were losing jobs even pre-pandemic, and that includes manufacturing significantly. That's just long-term sectoral declines all over, not just in California, all over the country. And retail trade, there's been some structural changes in that industry as more and more people relying on delivery services rather than going to the store to purchase their goods. So as you can see, most of those jobs really are lying at or below the average wage. And then COVID hit. And our population, again, last year was actually the first time we saw a decline in population. That really had mostly to do with excess deaths attributed, unfortunately, to COVID-19. Our labor force participation also, that blue on the outside are 2019 and the green is the 2021. So it's shrunk a little bit, and you can see female on the right, male on the left. And a lot of that participation in the labor force, which makes you, working and earning, has really shrunk a little bit, both for male and female. And a lot of that has to do with changes in the industry. And also, if you are caring for a sick family member with COVID, or if you have to take care of your children because schools are shutting down, you're less likely to be looking for work. And so you drop out of the labor force and you're not working. And so this is like, even just in a two-year period, we see a really significant change in our labor force participation. So COVID-19 hit, every single sector was impacted. Not one sector escaped the job losses from COVID-19. And you can see, obviously, all the job losses were on the left of that vertical line and where the jobs were concentrated. So in April 2020, just 2 short months, you can see the significant impact on job losses.
Except for the federal government, right?
Huh?
Except for the federal government.
Yeah. Yes. Well, federal government actually didn't lose. It was like right at the, right next to it. And that also had to do with the census at that time as well. So they kind of escaped a little bit, but not too much. And so they had those temporary census workers. So now we're looking at December 2021 relative to February 2020. So we're almost at a 2-year period where our job growth has been concentrated in California. Again, you can see the same issues of existing inequalities continuing. Most of those jobs are below the average wage. We're still having, there's still, most of the sectors actually still below fewer jobs than they were in February 2020. So in 2 years in, we're still seeing a long way to go in terms of recovery. Leisure and hospitality lost about half their jobs in May 2020. So they still have a long way to recover, even though they're recovering. Health and education services is a relatively large sector, and that's added a lot of jobs, but they're still paying way below the average wage. So if you're not familiar, I do encourage all of you to check out the California budget. It's at ebudget.ca.gov, and it has every single dollar that's allocated in the state budget for every single program. And I'll talk a little bit more through this, but at the end, I will encourage you to reach out to your local state representatives, to your local business organizations, and all other organizations, to really, because the budget is a reflection of California's priorities. And California's priorities are a reflection of the people who live here. So the more everybody participates in the civic process, the better it's going to be for all of us. So GDP, remember I said we had contracted right at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's because everything stopped. People stopped making goods and service and providing services, and people stopped buying goods and services. Everything stopped, demand and supply. Then we rebounded in the second quarter or the third quarter of 2020 because once people got a handle on the pandemic, they started purchasing again. And so we snapped back relatively quickly, and then it slows down because once you buy that, that car that you've been waiting to buy, you're not going to buy another car in the following quarter. So, demand and purchases kind of slow down and even out. And so over the next few years, we expected to kind of follow the patterns where we were before. California's GDP recovered in the first quarter of 2021. The US GDP recovered in the second quarter of 2021. So we did recover one whole quarter faster than the rest of the country. However, our unemployment lags a little bit. So we are a really productive state. Our people work really hard, produce a lot, and create a lot of output. And so, our GDP might have recovered, but we still have fewer people in the workforce working than we did pre-pandemic. And the blue line is California, the red line is the United States. You could see that the California unemployment follows the US trajectory, but it's still a couple of percentage points higher. And that's not necessarily something that is a huge worry for us. We generally stay along those lines. A lot of it has to do with churn. People move in and out of the workforce. They're looking for work. They are creating their own businesses. They're going back to school. So we have a lot of churn. We also have industries that really are seasonal. We have a lot of people who work in agriculture. We have a lot of people who work in leisure and hospitality. And there are some busy seasons and there are some slower seasons. So this is not, so if you are working for a few months, and you stop working for a few months and collect unemployment, then you are reflected in the unemployment rates for those periods that you're not working. I'm sorry. Is there a question?
So you happy with that?
No.
What?
No, sorry.
Someone needs to mute, please.
I'm trying. Hold
All
on.
right, and let me see if I can help. Okay, thank you.
So, I said that we had hit, this pandemic was really the worst recession we have seen in our lifetimes, unless we remember the Great Depression. But in terms of recovery, that red line is a recovery in employment. So although we were hit relatively hard, you can see how far that red line's fallen. We are going to snap back relatively sooner versus other recessions. We expect that our unemployment is going to get back to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year. During the Great Recession, it took about 7 years. So you can see we're going to, even though we were hit hard, because the conditions of our economy before the pandemic in terms of growth were all there. This was an exogenous shock that came from the outside, the public health crisis. The factors that were in place for our economy to continue to grow were already there. So we just have to turn that engine back on and we'll get moving again. Contributions to personal income growth. This is the total for California. It's not per person. And we actually grew, our personal income grew at the height of this pandemic, which is surprising because normally you think people are going to lose money. But because of those unprecedented transfers, both from the federal government and the state government with the stimulus payments and all other supports. So that purple bar you can see is the transfers that people received. Of course, in 2021, a lot of those supporting programs ended. And then in 2022, as they end, that draws down on the personal income growth. But it's still on net positive because we're still seeing our personal income grow. And a lot of that is due to our total wages and salaries. High income earners, pull up the net for everybody. And high income earners during this recession have been insulated from the recession. They transitioned to working from home. They were able to move to other parts of the state. And so they were able to continue working. And because they were continuing to work, our total personal income grew. Housing is a sign of an economy in recovery. The more permits we have, the better generally it is in terms of what we expect. It's an indicator of our economic recovery. So the dotted line is total permits, and the dark black line is the total permits in our May revision. And the multifamily is the dark red, and the pink is the single family. So right before this recession hit, we were seeing a shift towards more multifamily as a percentage. And we were thinking maybe people were being more willing to live closer to job centers, cut down on their commute costs and things like that. Again, that shift after the recession, because now people are like, you know what, for health and safety reasons, I do want to live apart from other people. So that's also something we've seen. California revenues by source. This looks at the state revenues that the state receives to fund all the state programs and budget programs. And you can see since 1950, so in 70 years, how much of that has changed. In 1950 and 51, retail sales and taxes were 60% of state revenue. Now, the bulk of our tax revenue comes 66%, 2/3 comes from personal income tax. And most of that is from our high income earners. We do have a really progressive tax system. So the distribution of taxes has changed. Corporation tax, I also noticed, was 15% in 1950, and now it's just 12%. So these have changed where we are receiving the money that goes into our state's budget. Despite being in the worst economic recession in history, our forecast is really robust in terms of what we're expecting. We are seeing a significant surplus in our budget. And when we have a surplus, we actually can make some really key decisions to make some significant changes in how we are serving the people of California. So this looks at the projection over the next 4 years in the forecast window and how much money we're expecting to have. So California budget priorities. I said the budget is a reflection of our values as Californians, and this includes fighting COVID-19 with science, combating the climate crisis. There is not going to be one Californian that's going to escape this issue. Fighting wildfires, tackling the drought. January was an unseasonably dry month for us, unfortunately. We've started to see some fires, especially in Northern California, and that is really concerning for our fire season for this year. And forging an oil-free future. Confronting homelessness, that's been an issue even pre-pandemic, and it continues to be a significant focus in this budget. Tackling the cost of living, it's one thing to say it's really expensive to live in California and just kind of throw our hands up, and there's other things that we can do to try to make some changes. So the budget includes money to universal access to healthcare, confronting the cost of childcare and education, building more housing, and growing small businesses. That's a priority. And of course, public safety, both for business owners and people, their employees and their customers, and those are important. So I wanted to touch on a few things that are in the budget that's primarily related to small businesses, but I do encourage all of you to read the budget itself. It's 400 pages, so maybe skip those sections that you don't like and maybe just focus on the ones you do. But I just pulled up a few key ones. $500 million allocated for tax relief for qualified recipients of federal relief grants in significantly impacted industries. Career pathways focused on local partnerships, waiving initial filing fees, expanding programs that provide technical assistance and access to capital in underserved communities, $150 million in additional funds for previously waitlisted businesses in the Small Business Relief Grant Program, which has so far been the largest such program in the country. Additional support, $3 billion to reduce the unemployment insurance trust fund debt that is owed to the federal government. $450 million for local governments to support economic and workforce transitions that are caused by COVID-19, climate change, and other factors. That helps to have a robust workforce that you can draw on for your businesses. 20 million to small businesses victimized by retail trades. And there's also ancillary supports in the budget that really are, looking at it from a holistic perspective, are important for businesses in California. Education, you want an educated workforce. Housing, you want your customers and your workers to be able to afford to live in California. Climate change, public safety, workforce development, and of course, the biggest issue right now, the immediate big issue, is public health. Once we get a handle on this pandemic, once we put the COVID-19 behind us, we can really start moving forward and making some changes. So there's some risks to the outlook. It's relatively encouraging and positive. Public health concerns. If there's another variant, Omicron, we're just kind of getting a handle on Omicron. If there's another one, there's no way of anticipating that. Sustained high inflation, if that lasts longer than the Fed is expecting. Labor market frictions, stock market correction, climate change, of course, drought and wildfires, the critical housing shortage in California, the existing income inequality, and of course, demographic challenges from an aging population and a declining birth rate. So that concludes my forecast. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for that presentation. So we're going to have some questions. So if you have some questions, I see a few of them here in the chat already. So the first one here is from the economic standpoint, how can California address underemployment? I think you covered some of that, and the number of California residents who have stopped looking for employment because they're not counted in unemployment figures.
Yes, that is a really important issue for us. The unemployment rate that I talk about is the official one, which is the U3 rate, which is people who are working full-time or looking for full-time work. The underemployment is generally about twice as high as the official unemployment rate. And those are people who are underemployed, who want to work full-time and who cannot find work. And also people who are in the labor force are technically those who are looking for work. Those who've dropped out, we still have about 400,000 people who've dropped out and stayed out of the labor force since the beginning of the pandemic. That means they're not even looking for work at this point. And one of those issues is really the importance of, and I think California has really taken a significant approach of prioritizing our human life first, even at some economic costs. And so our hospitalization rate and our death rate as a percentage of our population is one of the lowest in the country. So it's been, the trade-off is a really difficult one to make, but we did make some and so once we get even more of a handle, we get people fully vaccinated, get their boosters, maybe start using our masks in a permanent long-term capacity, maybe making some changes in how we do business, because a lot of businesses have already adapted, but continue to do that. If there's ways for people to work from home, if there's ways for people to work other shifts, if there's, if restaurants can transition from in-person dining to, and a lot of them already have, to takeout or outdoor dining or some other, changes, I think once people feel comfortable, they'll start going back and looking for work. One of the things I heard when we were seeing that unemployment insurance, that they were getting extended unemployment benefits, an extra $300 a month or a week. And people were like, oh, this is going to prevent people from looking for work. They're going to make so much money, which isn't, that didn't happen that we saw, because a lot of the low wage sectors like leisure and hospitality and other services have continued to add jobs. Those would be the sectors where I would think you would be making less money and you wouldn't look for work because you were making all that extra money with the extended benefits. But people also forget, on the other side of it, those extended benefits, people are not saving them in their banks. They're not investing in the stock market. They're taking that money and they are investing in themselves and their families. They are going out and purchasing things that they've put off. They're making sure their kids' braces are done. They're, making sure their car is fixed so they can drive to work. So that feeds into the economy as well. It's not just somebody taking that $300 and sitting at home. They're reinvesting it in the community. And so that was part of the benefits of it. So it's not just an isolated, oh, they're staying at home and they're not working, they don't want to work. They were actually taking that money and fixing their lives up. And so when they started returning to work, and then now people have a bigger voice. They're like, I don't want to work and face an angry public face to face with my hours changing every week. I need more stable hours. I need healthcare because this public pandemic has shown me that I need decent healthcare. I need something that I can take my kids to school and go to work, and if you change my hours on me on a day-to-day basis, how am I going to take care of my kids? So, it's a lot of, and a lot of businesses that respect their workers and take their concerns into account. I think they've been really successful or in this pandemic versus other ones where like, this is how we've always done it. So this is how we're going to keep doing it. And this has kind of shown like, your family comes first, your communities come first, your health comes first, and then your job supports all of that. So I think it's been some changes in that. So once we adapt to that, I think we'll see some positive changes. That was a really long.
Crystal, it's Denise Peoples. Can I ask a quick question? Being in the staffing industry for several years and being close to the economy in Los Angeles in particular.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Ms. Mitra, I understand everything you're saying. We borrow from Peter to pay Paul to take care of important things. I want to go deeper into the inner cities of our communities, not the whole spectrum of Los Angeles where there's heavy wealth. In our inner city communities, you're not incentivized to take these jobs. Hospitality jobs have risen. They've upped the pay, but at $19 an hour, $17 to $19 an hour, you still can't put gas in your car and you have to show up and work real hard.
Yeah.
There aren't necessarily incentives and I understand they have to sustain too, but in reality is a lot of times our youth is tied to subsidies from the government. So if they make so much income in one particular family,
yes,
they lose their benefits.
Yes.
So there is no winning situation.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of pussyfooting around those in our Latino and African-American communities in Los Angeles that can't make it off that money.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that. Sorry.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that is a concern. Even when we raise the minimum wage, which is one of the highest in the country, and it's still seems really low to me, that $15 an hour, and people are like, oh my gosh, how are businesses going to survive? And you look around, like you said, and businesses are actually trying to offer more money than that. But it's still, I think there's might be some other non-monetary considerations business can do.
Yeah, there are other perks. But then when you look at companies like UPS, because I talk to everybody, I go into the UPS store and I ask those employees, I said, oh, wow, it must be costing UPS millions and zillions of dollars to provide benefits because there are over 50 employees in the state of California.
Yeah.
You know what UPS did? They went and turned them into franchises to avoid having that. While small businesses like us take on the bearing, and we want people to get more money, minimum wage, but we can't afford to pay it.
Yep. Yeah.
Another catch-22.
It's actually, you're totally right. And it is an issue. So I do, encourage all of you to, get involved. The Go Business is an organization on the state level that supports small businesses, especially in underserved communities, reaching out to your local representatives. And, I think part of it is, we all live here. We all benefit from a healthy, vibrant economy, healthy, vibrant people. And I think it's all of us trying to work on this problem together. And Denise, like you said, like you were really trying. So I just hope all of us kind of keep working on it, because we can't just give up and throw our hands up and say, oh, it sucks. Like, I feel like we all need to keep fighting the good fight.
How do we, so along those same lines, so, obviously we're still trying to come out of this pandemic, and it still has a major effect on all of our lives, on how we make money. But at the same time, we haven't come out of it. But at the same time, it's like other entities in the state are trying to say we're out of it, like the EDD coming after the people that received unemployment during the time of the pandemic that helped keep them surviving, right? Now they're asking them to pay that money back. Well, we're not out of the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic. We're still going. And it's like things still coming at us from all sides. We're trying to regain our steps, but it's just too much pressure coming in. How do we address that? And who do we address that to? Thus, those of us in our community, who are our representatives? How do we position ourselves to make sure that we think of the people that are in this state as well? All the people.
Yes, I think, you would reach out to your local government, and they can put you in touch with your state representatives for EDD, because sometimes they can have, they'll be able to connect with them faster and help you if there's some specific issues that are really affecting all people, not just, you, like having your EDD check coming late. This is like a bigger issue than that. I think your local chambers are helpful in terms of getting the business connections. And I think there's the budget also references some assistance that the EDD is getting. So I unfortunately do not know exactly who to contact at EDD that can help you. But I know some people have had success asking their local representatives to reach out to them. So that's and working with them. And then, contacting your legislators, you could look up where they, who represents you, and then develop a relationship with them, because the legislators, they hear from people all the time, and then on the administration side, that's when the budget is proposed. And the legislators like, I heard from so-and-so, I heard from my people, we need to do this. So let's add another 50 million to EDD. I'm making that up completely, but it's based on who they hear from. So if they don't hear from you, they don't know you need this help. And so they might hear from somebody else and who says, oh, we don't need any more help. We're done. And then that's who they're going to listen to, because that's who they heard from. So I encourage all of you to, your civic engagement. I know sometimes it sounds like, oh, who's going to listen to me in government? But it really starts with us. Keep making, keep pushing, keep fighting, keep making sure that we get heard, because we have to do it. Who else will help us, right? So, make those relationships. I'm happy to try. If you email me, I'm happy to help look for that. Who's going to be your representative and things. I'm happy to try to help you with that, because it really is important that your legislators hear from you.
Can you provide us with? You just made a very profound statement about what happens on the legislative side versus the administrative side. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit more information about the timing of that? So, sure. So the budget season starts, when do we need to be doing the advocacy before it gets to that process timing wise? And then my other question is, there was nothing in your deck related to this whole supply chain and the logistics issues. And that's my other question that I want to bring up.
Sure. The budget process is really a year-long thing. The governor releases his budget, which is his proposed idea of what to do with the general fund, by January 10th. And then May is the revision. The revision is the agreement between the administration and the legislators about the changes in the programs that gets officially enacted June 1st for that fiscal year. So, just if you have an idea June 2nd, don't worry, because like I said, it's a year-long process. So you can definitely keep engaged and keep active, but this will be the prime period for enactment in June for this budget. So for the May revision. So that's when.
So let me make this a little bit more clearer. When I was in the banking industry, the budget process started in November. I would start talking to my clients and looking at my own budget in August. So if you're telling me that the governor starts in January and he submits his draft for them to vote on it by June, do we start back in August? When do we start talking to these people, putting our challenges and issues on? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, there's actually not a specific time.
Got it.
Because sometimes what's happened in like this governor's budget on January 10th, there's been things that have been agreed to months in ahead. And
Got
then we also try to adjust because, like the pandemic is a constantly changing thing. So, we try to, make some changes. So I work on the economic forecast in November, and that goes to the revenue so that they project how much revenues the state has. And that feeds into all the units, all the budget units about how much money each state program can allocate. And that gets released on January 10th. But the conversations are already happening for months. And even if it doesn't get enacted in this budget, like I said, there's no reason to think it won't get enacted in the future budget. So the conversation keeps going. And there's been things that have been put off for whatever reason, and they might get enacted in this budget, or they might get enacted in the following budget. So that's why I say, don't give up if, things don't happen right away. Government moves slow. So I would just keep going. So if you want to start talking, like I said, like the fiscal year starts on June 1st. But if you have an idea on June 2nd, that doesn't mean you have to wait until November to start implementing it. You start having those conversations as soon as you have that idea, or as soon as you have that question. Get that process started.
I heard you, but Addison gave us some good information that's in the chat box that everybody needs to take a look at. Then the other thing that I mentioned was, there was nothing in there talking about this whole supply chain thing. And I think that is probably one of the other biggest hindrances when you listed all of those challenges that we're having.
Yeah, so that's also something that the state can only do so much in terms of impacting it, because a lot of our intermediate goods come from other countries like China and Southeast Asia, and they are getting hit differently with the COVID-19. And when, for example, China has a zero COVID policy, so they've shut down a lot of their production. And so a lot of production has started to move to other parts of Southeast Asia, which takes time. And by that time, things start moving to, let's say, Vietnam. China comes back online because they've managed to handle it. So things go back. So in terms of the supply chain, we are thinking, this is the year that things kind of unwind on the supply chain. All that pent up supply and all of that kind of eases into our ports and our railways and our planes this year. So it's going to take this year to kind of unwind those effects. And then we should see, if all goes as we are thinking it will, by 2023, things will go back to normal in terms of our supply chain.
Oh, wow.
I can agree to disagree with you because, I passed San Pedro about a week ago and I'm certain part of the challenge is there's so much of the government that is not technically, that does not have the right technology for the way businesses run right now. And I think that is the biggest hurdle. And then my other soapbox is the fact that private industry needs to help the government, but trying to get private industry people into the government process is another challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I always encourage, even though I'm part of the government, I always, we're all in this together. It's not business versus government. It's not business versus California. We're all in it. So, I think, if we can all kind of work together and think of the big picture, but it's tough. I totally agree with you. Private sector, sometimes government is slow a little bit in terms of,
Come on, girl.
I'm on the economic research side, so I'm
speed.
But it is a challenge. And I think people California is so, and it is, but I feel what they say about New York, if you can make it in California, you can make it anywhere. So, I just feel like there are challenges. It's just, like you said, if a business has a great idea about how to move the ships, unload the ships, keep talking to your local legislators. Don't, and then if they don't listen once, keep talking to them.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes people give up because they didn't hear from you right away. But it's, just keep talking to them until somebody hears you.
I just wish somebody would pick up the phone.
Well, a lot of it is, yeah, that is,
And I think a collective voice is probably louder than an individual voice. So I think if we all collectively figured out a way to communicate in a bigger way, we could get some stuff moving. You can't move a mammoth with a pebble. You gotta have a big
Yeah.
voice. There's one other question, and then we want Dr. Mays to jump in and give us some update on the pandemic. What if, a lot of families, even with California health care, some of them didn't have health care at all. Is there any financial assistance that's going to be provided to patients and families struggling with pandemic related expenses? I know my business partner, he got hit with a $150,000 bill. And again, we're all coming out of the pandemic. So it's even those of us that are individual, that are self-employed, we're not back where we were in 2019. Some have been lucky to do that based upon the industry, but majority of the industries out here, we didn't have that luxury. So are there any programs that are looking at how do we deal with that? Because medical costs can decimate a world.
I believe there is. I don't I don't know every piece of it, but so I do, please look at the budget. I sent you the link to it, and you could find the information in there, because I do believe there is some money. I just I don't know exactly how much is in there, Californians,
So
and what the process is for getting that. It's that's they automatically send it to you, like the Golden State stimulus, some that you have to apply for, like the small business relief grant. So it's all different. So.
Well, thank you so much. You've been awesome. Someone asked, so was the deck that you provided, is that available?
I can email it.
Okay. Can you email that to Stephen, and Stephen will get it to me, and I will get it out to everyone. You have been awesome. I know you were on the hot seat there, but you're a trooper. You did well. And so thank you so much. And that presentation was awesome. That gives us a great insight into what we are looking at, and also gives us places where we can have some questions for our representatives and how to frame those questions. And Addison, you've been awesome. We're going to talk to you in a little bit as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Vicki Mays, and so she can give us some more information on how to protect ourselves and what's new on the horizon of the Omicron, Homicron, Tunicron.
We're trying to move to no cron.
Oh,
that's
I like that.
No cron. So anyway, good morning, family. What I wanted to talk about today, and this will be short and brief, is I want to give you homework. In the next, I can't say with certainty exactly when, but probably between now and maybe sometime in March, they will be asking for emergency use authority to release a vaccine for children from 6 months to age 5 years. Now, I'm starting to ask people to, what are your questions now? Get your questions out now, because many people are saying, I'm going to wait. And I said, wait for what? Just so that you have a little bit of background before something can be released for emergency authorization use, it has been through clinical trials. So as of December, there were about 5,000 children who had been in clinical trials. This was in Spain, in Poland, in Finland, in the US. So altogether, there were about 90 different sites for this clinical trial. Now, some of us are trying to track down how many were Black people, how many were Black children with asthma and this and that. So we're still doing that. But you need to think now, what are the grounds upon which you want your child or your sister's child or, some child that you have a lot of interaction with to get the vaccine? I can't tell you any more than that, because what goes from a clinical trial then to a huge number of people will sometimes allow us to see those cracks. But at the same time, if you don't know it, the data is telling us that it is Black and brown children who are the worst once they get infected of ended up in the hospital and dying. So people, I'm gonna wait and see. It needs to be a short wait and see. Either you make up your mind and you really isolate that child so they have no way to get infected, or if you're gonna let them run around, particularly run around me in the store. I think the other day somebody thought I was crazy. The child was running towards me and I ran the other way. I was double masked. And I guess the people said, what's she doing? It was like, no. The child was just giggling and having a great time. And I was like, that's fine. Just let me move over a little bit, because I knew the child was too young to be vaccinated. Old enough for a mask, but too young to be vaccinated, kind of thing. So the key that you need to think about at this point in time is, what are the risks if there is a vaccine for your child not taking it? And as someone put in the chat, it is, what is the benefit that you're going to gain? And it's not benefit just for the child, but it's the benefit for the family. It's the benefit of, can you have more social connectedness? Now, I will tell you the one thing that is going on, and they probably could have had this out earlier, but they decided to look at third dose. So for the Pfizer vaccine, it's going to be 2 doses. And they're looking to see whether or not, much like in adults, there should be a 3rd dose. So the vaccine so far has proven to not be toxic, to be safe. So they haven't seen, anything other than the same kind of things that, any one of us had. Somebody gonna be crying because the arm gonna be sore. Somebody gonna be maybe a little fussy because they got a headache. But they haven't shown, anything that is long lasting and detrimental so far. Now, remember, when I'm saying that today, I'm saying that based on the science. When mass distribution occurs, we get to learn some other things. But I want you all to think about how long this, if you are in the category, I'm going to wait, then I want you to be responsible waiters and say, what is it you're waiting for? And ask somebody. I'm happy if I'm on to try and answer your question, because I don't want you to wait. If your child want to run around the store around me, I want to vaccinate it. I'm just going to be honest. Even though I know masks are protection, I don't want anybody else getting sick. So that's what I got today, Crystal.
Thank you. And Dr. May, so what is that time frame? So you, if you are exposed 5 days, I know there was questions last week between 7 days and 10 days. Did we solve that problem? Should we be isolated for 10 days? Should we be isolated for 5 days? Should we be isolated for the rest of our lives until Charles Crown? What's supposed to happen here?
Crystal, I'm eventually going to get you out there in the sun to be able to, be able to be free a bit. So I'm definitely going to answer your questions.
Okay.
So first of all, we have to say, what we do is also dependent on what happened. So if what happened is that you got a notification that someone, in your environment, is known to have COVID, that's kind of different than you having symptoms and what you do. So we have to remember that it's like the likelihood and the potential for risk of being infected will differ. So some people get a notification, like at UCLA, if I tell them when I came in what buildings I was in, I might get a notification that somebody was in that building. And so therefore I have to decide, like, what time, where was I, how long, did I take my mask off to drink or anything like that? Then I have to figure out whether or not what I need to do is to isolate myself. If I'm having symptoms and I go and I test positive, I need to quarantine myself, meaning I need to make sure that it's not just I'm worried about going out with people. I need to, if I live with other people, if I live in little spaces, I need to actually make sure I'm not coming into contact with the other people there. That's quarantining. And in quarantining, the CDC has said you can go back after 5 days if you wear a mask and you have no symptoms. Well, I'm going to tell you, that's what the CDC said. In my circle, it's like, I tell you, 7 to 10 days before you come back, if you ended up actually testing positive, because we just don't want to take any chance. The reason for people being able to go back and supposedly being very careful and doing 5 days is because they don't want the economy to shut down. Economy shuts down, not only do people get more vulnerable to getting infected because they are food insecure and everything else. So it was a balancing act. So in my book, if you can, I tell you, take the longer path. In my office, take the longer path. If you just feel like I can't stop you, but I can give you permission. So I can give you permission not to come back, particularly if you got sick leave and stuff like that. But if you don't have any of that, you have to come back and it's on you, then I will prepare your work to be in a way in which you can phone it in from the office you're in while we're someplace else. So we do take precautions.
Okay, so thank you so much for that information. You've been awesome as always. Thank you to everyone. Great information today. Stephen, are you still here? Stephen here? Stephen, you want to tell us who our guest is tomorrow if you have accessibility and to introduce yourself? Yes, Stephen is not there. So next week we have Miss Wendy Gladney, or Mrs. Wendy Gladney, and her husband Ron Lowe. They're going to come talk about Black love, I guess, next week, since we're in February and it's Valentine's weekend. And so that's what we're going to talk about next week. Y'all should all come back now, right? So keep safe, wear your mask. Encourage your family members with younger children to get their vaccinations and make sure that they're masked. I always find it absolutely interesting that the parents have on masks, coats, hats, jackets, gloves, and the kids have no shoes on, no gloves on, no mask. What the heck is that? So encourage your family members with small children, and then if the vaccine is available, get them vaccinated. We do have to get out of this, guys. It's ridiculous before the next strand comes along. Thank you so much. Welcome back, Ms. Robin, Ms. Somjita, is that what it was, Greg? Okay, thank you so much for all the amazing information. Greg, did you want to say something before we tap out? Thank you, Lamont. Thank you, Addison, for putting that information. You guys should definitely save the chat. It's some valuable information in there, some good questions as well. Maybe we can send some emails to Miss Mitra and she can answer those. Emma, welcome. Thank you. Greg?
No, Greg had to leave. Greg, yeah, he'll be back next week.
Okay, Greg is an imposter there. So thank you, guys. Robin, you want any parting words before we leave?
You guys, again, let's remember that, if you've been on some of this social media, there's some people who are really just upset with us, okay? They are upset with the fact that we get a month to celebrate Black history. But I'm saying this strictly from my heart. It ain't nothing like being Black. It ain't nothing like being Black. The Lord only made one man and one woman, and I guess who's the surviving race? That's us. With all that we've been through and all that, and we have compassionate hearts, because if we didn't, some other folks wouldn't even be alive. So let's continue to be who we are and what we represent. And again, the community briefing is here as a family to lift each other up. Let's celebrate.
Amen.
All right. We during the month of February, I'm Black year round, but during the month of February, I'm blackity black. So, and I hope you guys have that same attitude. Have a great week, guys. Be safe.
Yes.
And we'll see you next Thursday.
All right. Take care, everybody. Take care of family, as Dr. May says.
Bye-bye, guys.